on in this state. We know that Jason Barrett has been assigned as the special prosecutor to look into prosecuting Jake Files, who, by the way, yesterday had got 18 months for the River Valley theft. And David Norsworthy, who's behind this tort reform effort, he and his partner Michael Morton. What we know is that they gave Jake Files an $80,000, or at least Norsworthy gave Jake Files an $80,000 wire transfer 1 week after similar measures were instituted in 2014 to take away our rights. So before we sell our rights down the river, we better be careful.
You're exactly right about that. As I read Randy Zook, okay, Randy Zook is the Arkansas Chamber of Commerce president. Hey, Joe, can you cue up this audio real quick? I want everybody to hear. Anytime I mention Randy Zook's name, I try to make an effort to remind people who he is, what he sounds like. This is Randy Zook's opinion on parents helping their kids with their homework. Take a listen.
Because I've been up here in the legislature when folks were rattling around and screaming bloody murder, and I can't help my kid with their homework. Well, they shouldn't be helping their kid with the homework in the first place. You know, that's a teacher's job. That's my opinion. Well, they shouldn't be helping their kid with the homework in the first place. You know, that's a teacher's job.
As a very elitist mentality, and actually terrifying. I mean, anyway, I just wanted to remind everybody that's who Randy Zook is. He basically is saying that this bad tort reform amendment, he might as well say it's the cure to cancer, Joey.
That's it. I mean, but what we know it does do is put a value on human life when our elderly folks are abused in nursing homes. We know that it puts a value on children's lives. And if we want to encourage bad doctors to come into our state, bad nursing home owners to come into our state, then pass this measure. Conduct rewarded is conduct repeated, and that is not the types of folks we want to attract into our state. We need to make our society safer, not less safe. And to rig the system in favor of special interests, that's just wrong. Mm-hmm. And we better be careful. It's a bait and switch. They want to slam greedy trial lawyers, and then take away our rights. And we saw this happen with Issue 3, where they sold it as ethics reform, and then they increased term limits, and they increased legislator pay. How's that ethics thing worked out for us over the last few years?
Hey, do you think convincing what do we do? I mean, because I'm not a supporter of Issue 1. I could support some tort reform, but not this. This is industry specific tort reform for the nursing homes. Do you think part of the effort here? You mentioned corruption at the top of the interview. Part of the effort to convince the people to vote against this has got to start with telling people what a corrupt state we are, because I mean, it is amazing to me that you have a judge that
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks so much for being with us. The intersection of conservative ideas and reality. We're building a liberty machine. We're so glad that you are with us. You can call or text 870-275-9799. You can also sound off on our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/Conduit News. That's facebook.com/Conduit News. Is anybody else out there loving these Supreme Court decisions? I mean, I certainly am. Matter of fact, the two big ones from yesterday, which is the Trump travel ban basically being upheld, and also the fact that pregnancy help centers or pregnancy resource centers don't have to advertise for abortions or tell their clients where they can go get an abortion if they want to. And the whole purpose of a pregnancy help center is to discourage abortion and protect the life of the child. I can't even believe that one, by the way, was a 5-4 decision. That's pretty embarrassing when you think about it. Actually, it's a little bit more worrisome. Just it shows you how important that Neil Gorsuch seat really was. You know, the seat that the left continues to say was stolen, and they blame Mitch McConnell for stealing because it was supposed to be Merrick Garland. You know, yeah, Merrick Garland. Remember that. How valuable is this Donald Trump election? Here's the thing, though: the Supreme Court seat wasn't stolen. The Democrats lost Senate elections. That's what happens. You should have been winning elections, and then you could have confirmed whoever Barack Obama wanted you to confirm. But guess what? You couldn't because you lost, and then you lost the presidency. This is how things work. So win elections. The blue wave, is the blue wave coming? I don't think so, but I'm going to be talking tomorrow on the program with Alliance Defending Freedom. We're going to have a representative there. Attorney Jim Campbell will be on the program from the Alliance Defending Freedom. Matter of fact, we're going to talk about both cases. We're going to talk about the pregnancy center case, as well as there was a florist case we haven't covered that essentially used the same. When the Supreme Court ruled on the cake maker a couple of weeks ago, says that, he doesn't have to bake the cake. Well, likewise, you have the florist who was in a similar situation, and they basically have just applied the baking ruling to the florist situation as well. So we'll be talking with attorney from Alliance Defending Freedom, Jim Campbell, on the program tomorrow. Excited to do that. Let's talk about the travel ban, though. This is the big one. I'm telling you, this is the one that has a lot of cultural implications. We have the mainstream media, of course, continuing. Really, the mainstream media here is cashing in on an investment they made back when the President Donald Trump, President of the United States, when he first initiated the travel ban. You see, anybody with any sense, anybody with any kind of brain, half a brain, really, you would know and understand the law that the President of the United States clearly has the authority to ban people based on country of origin. Period. He is the commander-in-chief of the military, okay? Obviously, here's a guy that has the authority as the commander-in-chief of the military, whose sole goal is to protect us, can say, you know what? I don't think people who were born in Yemen need to come over for America for a while until we get our vetting process sorted out. Oh, I don't know. We do have, we have almost had the Times Square bomber. You had the Boston bomber. We had intelligence agencies saying, from international ones saying, hey, you need to watch these guys, and we missed them. I think our immigration process is just a little bit off. What do you guys think? So Donald Trump gets in there, and again, anybody with half a brain knew that he had the authority to do what he did to ban certain countries, people from certain countries from coming here. If you know anything about the concept of the commander-in-chief, that's a no-brainer. But the media is cashing in on their lies once again because they lied to everybody, and they said that it was preposterous. They said it was racist. They said it was a Muslim ban. And now that the Supreme Court in a 5-4 decision has come out and said that, yes, Donald Trump, really, the President of the United States in any capacity, has the authority and the power, according to the law, to do exactly what he did. And so now the left goes in a tailspin. I want to get to the specifics of what the Supreme Court ruled, but a couple of observations. What this ruling does to the left and what this ruling really does to the media is it rejects one of their key one of their key ways to try to transform this society in this country. And it's something called multiculturalism. Have you heard about this? Multiculturalism. We haven't talked about this in a very long time on the program. Multiculturalism is the leftist belief that all cultures are equal, that the things they produce basically are the same, that the ideas that propel one culture in this direction and the ideas that propel this other culture in this direction must be treated equally and respected equally based on what they produce, that what they produce is essentially the same and it's a value and blah, 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 blah. And it's so weird because that doesn't exist anywhere in nature that you can see around you, where there's this built-in sympathy for people that, and you're again trying to define your own reality. Maybe you don't like the fact that the course of history shows that American ideas are, by and large, better than other cultures' ideas. Maybe you don't like that. Maybe you don't like the results that we have. It's actually called it's a fear called oikophobia, fear of the familiar. A lot of leftists have it where they want to tear down. They can't help. They just can't take the fact that America hasn't been perfect. But America has a lot of prosperity in spite of a lot of our failures, and they can't take it, so they want to tear our culture down. And that's where this whole concept of multiculturalism comes in, that all cultures are equal, the things they produce are equal, and that is just not true. Look around you, folks. Look around you. You're driving, right now most of you are driving in a 2-ton vehicle going 70 miles an hour on smooth asphalt. And you're able to travel with freedom, not to mention you have freedom. Other countries, you can't even do that. So, yeah, multiculturalism is a lame concept. And it was rejected by the Supreme Court in a way yesterday. I mean, it's not written in the opinion, but I'm just saying this is why the left is in a tailspin. This is how they perceive it, okay? The media called it a Muslim ban. So now you have the left, they believe their country is over. We're regressing back to racism. We're all racists, and can you believe this? The reality is the media and the left are advancing a suicidal mentality. They don't even know it. It's really sad. It's like they're all running blindfolded to just like a fiery pit. They have a suicidal mentality. They believe, this is what multiculturalism teaches, by the way, they believe that no matter the risk to our country, we should assume that other cultures have our best interest at heart, regardless of vast evidence to the contrary. Because the media says stereotypes are bad. Stereotypes exist because people right now exist reinforcing those stereotypes. People reinforce stereotypes every single day, and the media and the left tells you that if you observe that, you're a racist. That's crazy. They're actually asking you to deny your own, your own senses, your own capacity for reason and observing the world around you. They say that we're anti-science. Give me a break. They're anti-science. The number is 870-275-9799. Let's go to the Breitbart article first. Picking up here from a quote from the, a quote from the opinion, quote, "The proclamation is squarely within the scope of presidential authority," the court declared in its opinion, authored by Chief Justice John Roberts. Under the Immigration and Nationality Act, foreign nationals seeking entry into the United States undergo a vetting process to ensure that they satisfy the numerous requirements for admission. The act also vets the president with authority to restrict the entry of aliens whenever he finds that their entry would be detrimental to the interests of the United States. Relying on that delegation, the president concluded that it was necessary to impose entry restrictions on nationals of countries that do not share adequate information for an informed entry determination, or that otherwise present national security risks, he continued. Now, let me stop there. I want you to understand something. In the first year of President Donald Trump's presidency, they tried everything they could. Now, they're still trying everything, but they keep falling into their own nets. They keep every net that they set for the president, they keep falling in. The first year was really, really rough in terms of perception, in terms of what the courts were doing to stop the power of the presidency and a duly elected president. And now we are in the second year, in the middle of his second year as president of the United States, and all of this stuff, all of this AstroTurf, all the lies the media were telling you, from the travel ban all the way to what James Comey really did and the bias he had, to Rod Rosenstein, which I think is going to come out, to this Peter Strzok, all of this is now unraveling. All of their firewalls are crumbling, and it's just fascinating to me. In the first 6 months of this year, you have seen a slow and steady revealing, if you will, of just how the media establishment has no clothes, and how the people who were at the top of our government under the Obama administration have a contempt for flyover country and have a contempt for middle America. And you're starting to see that, and this opinion is one of those things. Now, is it because of Neil Gorsuch and Trump? Yeah, I mean, that was such a huge deal. I don't think we understand the gravity of Neil Gorsuch getting that nomination and how President Trump's campaign about putting the right Supreme Court justice in, the promise he made to replace Antonin Scalia, is probably one of the best. It's probably the best promise he kept. I mean, we can look at the tax cuts, we could look at Jerusalem, moving the embassy, and all those promises that he's kept. But this one, right off the bat, too, was huge, and we are now reaping the results of. We are all reaping the results of going to voting for President Donald Trump. I mean, that's essentially what we're experiencing here in the news cycle. So as depressed as everybody was with 8 years of Obama, who was a Marxist, okay, who believed that if you had a business, you didn't contribute to it, you didn't build that the government is the one that enabled you to do all that, or that you somehow took advantage of somebody. That's their whole, their whole anti-colonialist mentality that they think about how America's raped the rest of the world, so all of America's people must be raping somebody or taking advantage of somebody to get what they have. I mean, these people, are in a lot of ways, they're just nuts. I feel sorry for them, but they're nuts. The opinion goes on. The proclamation exempts lawful permanent residents and foreign nationals who have been granted asylum. It also provides for case-by-case waivers when a foreign national demonstrates undue hardship and that his entry is in the national interest and would not pose a threat to public safety. So there is a process. Congress has also delegated to the president authority to suspend or restrict the entry of aliens in certain circumstances. The majority opinion went on. The principal source of that authority enables the president to suspend the entry of all aliens or any class of aliens whenever he finds that their entry would be detrimental to the interest of the United States. By its plain language, the law grants the president broad discretion to suspend the entry of aliens into the United States. The president lawfully exercised that discretion based on his findings following a worldwide multi-agency review. That entry of the covered aliens would be detrimental to the national interest. That's because everything else isn't working good. It's done to protect us. People have been saying, listen, and this is what's crazy. I mentioned that the left is suicidal here. That they're suicidal in terms of their mentality, Okay, they want us to admit anybody, anytime, anywhere that wants to come through here, whether you're from Mexico and you want to come illegally, or whether you're from Yemen and you've been born and raised in Yemen and you want to come here, because they want to assume that all cultures have the best interests, have our best interest at heart, regardless of the vast evidence out there to the contrary, and they do this in so many ways. And it's this mentality of self-destruction, and it's amazing that they don't even realize it. They don't even, in many ways, realize that. Anyway, we're gonna have to take a break here. I'm gonna regroup, but feel free to send us a text message 870-275-9799 or a phone call 870-275-9799. Good morning, Arkansas. Back in just a moment.
In Arkansas, every single hour there is a politician not getting what they want. For some, it's an absolute nightmare. The sleepless nights wondering if progress will ever come. Lying awake pondering how to grow government in this political climate. Asking questions like, why don't my constituents want to pay a few cents more in taxes? Everyday politicians feel abused and neglected. These politicians are starving for power. They're hungry, confused, and they don't understand why no one seems to care. Will you be a patriot and commit today to help these poor, starved for power public officials? It's simple. All you have to do is commit to stay silent and never dissent or stand in the way of your politicians' rise to power. Never speak up or get engaged to stop the growth of government. By committing to these simple steps, you will ensure the life of your politician will be filled with contentment and the respect they are desperately seeking, as well as campaign contributions from lobbyists.
This message brought to you by Aristocrats Serving Arkansas.
PHP Parody.
Yep, all of those. It's clearly a Muslim ban. When you've got a travel ban on North Korea and Venezuela, it's a Muslim ban. The media says. All those practicing Islamists in Venezuela and North Korea. So the 7 countries are. Let's see, you have Yemen, Somalia. Can you believe we would have a travel ban on the great nation of Somalia? Can you believe we'd have a travel ban on Syria, where they're in the middle of a civil war? Can you believe Donald Trump would ban the travel from countries like Libya, where our ambassador was murdered? And then you have Iran, which is, by the way, our media is not covering at all the fact that the people of Iran are wanting regime change, like an actual grassroots movement where they're challenging the government. Our media doesn't want to cover this. You go look at the protests. They're actually saying the people of Iran have taken to the streets and are chanting, "Death to Palestine." Do you think that might be something that is an anomaly when it comes to Middle Eastern countries and their revolutions? They're not saying death to Israel. They're not saying death to the United States. The people of Iran have taken to the streets and are chanting, "Death to Palestine." Media's like, no, we don't need to cover that. Now, remember what they did with Egypt and the revolution of Egypt, and remember all that? Remember the Arab Spring when they were talking about it? You had one guy in Tunisia that set himself on fire, and that started the Arab Spring. Do we remember this? But no. We don't need to know anything about Iran. We don't need to give Trump because Donald Trump is going to side with the people on this, because you obviously have Iran, which they've been the Iran nuclear deal is just a result of how bad it was. But I mean, there's just a lot of other stuff that's going on behind the scenes. But anyway, the media is just going to continue, ignore that stuff, ignore the big stuff, but instead, no, Donald Trump is a racist and he's banning Muslims from entering the United States. That's nothing further from the truth. Venezuela and North Korea are not Muslim countries, by the way. And right now you have Syria, Libya, Yemen, Somalia, and Iran. I think that's perfectly reasonable, considering the whole reason it was done is because Donald Trump had got in, and he's over a massive bureaucracy. He's in the executive branch of our government, and he's over a massive bureaucracy that has severe blind spots. Obvious. I mean, it's not even up for debate that our immigration system has clear blind spots, and we're not able to properly vet people that are coming here. And that's why Senator Tom Cotton, by the way, our senator, is doing amazing work on our behalf trying to reform our immigration system. And he dares suggest that the only people that should come here should have to demonstrate some merit to come here, meaning some contribution that they will give to our country other than being able to sign up on a welfare roll. Meaning we want you to have the skills necessary to contribute to our economy if we're going to let you in our country. Oh, Paul, you can't do that. That's just not right. You're being mean. No, you have somehow, and it's not a surprise, but not only is the concept that we are a welfare state with the amount of welfare that we have, we now have people that just assume that not only are the poorest among us entitled to what somebody else makes in the form of redistribution of wealth, we have people that believe the entire world is entitled to what people are making and generating, going to work, and the government's taking via taxes. Back in a minute. Pleads guilty to accepting a bribe in exchange for lowering a judgment for a nursing home owner. Okay, that is recent history here in Arkansas. You have now the $80,000 wire transfer that we know about. All of this stuff, and we went ahead and did what the nursing homes wanted anyway. I feel like that alone, like before we could talk about what this does or what it doesn't do, I feel like the other side needs to explain that away before we can talk about the actual merits of it, because on its face, red flags go up all over the place when it comes to special interest.
Yeah, absolutely. Michael Morton bribes a circuit court judge to lower the verdict of a person abused in a nursing home, and then his partner gives an $80,000 wire transfer to a state senator. When they can't get it done that way, then they go to the legislature and change the rules. And that's the scary thing. The balance of power, our separation of powers, will be totally disrupted in a highly political legislative body where Michael Morton and David Norsworthy and special interests can go down there and change the rules in a heartbeat and deny access, close the doors to the courthouse to folks like stay-at-home moms and children and our elderly, and that's the reason that folks like Jerry Cox with the Family Council have come out strongly against this. They understand you can't put a one-size-fits-all price tag on the value of human life. Rose Mims with Arkansas Right to Life has come out against it. Conservative after conservative understands that this is anything but conservative because we value the Bill of Rights, and we know that without a strong Seventh Amendment right to trial by jury, all the rest of our rights are going to be taken away from us eventually. You can't go. You've got to support all our Bill of Rights. You can't pick and choose like it's steak and shrimp on a smorgasbord.
Yeah. In a statement Friday, this is the Gazette, in a statement Friday, Arkansas Chamber of Commerce President Randy Zook said attorneys were exaggerating their claims about the changes in Issue 1. Well, I'll take a play out of their playbook. I'm going to say they're exaggerating how great Issue 1 is. But here's his quote. Lawyers who claim the sky is falling because of the rulemaking authority are simply trying to avoid the real issue at hand, which is recruiting doctors to care.
The intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, so we're we're supposed to be talking with Mr. Tim Loggins. We have a little phone technical difficulty right now. So Joe's trying to ferret that out right now. So yeah, just bear with us on. Yeah, Joe's going to figure it out. We're gonna keep going here. Okay. Yeah. Anyway. Just let me know. It may be that the phone itself, Joe, has just gone kaput. That's entirely possible. Sometimes they just I guess their life is extinguished. Telephone number again. Well, actually, we can't give you that telephone number, but we can give you the Facebook page to sound off. And you can text us, though. The text will still work. 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. So that will continue to work. All right, let's go to, until we can get in touch with Tim, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the tax force. I said force. I meant tax farce. They had a meeting yesterday, and they referred 3 different plans to a consultant about what they're going to do when it comes to your taxes here in the state of Arkansas. What are they going to do? There is an interesting different article that's up over at conduitforaction.org, and that details the little Twitter disagreement that happened between the president pro temp, Jim Hendren, or the incoming, and the Tax Foundation's Nicole Keating, and it's pretty fascinating. But at one point, the Conduit News Twitter handle used the term task farce. And now it wasn't me that tweeted that term. It was somebody else, a part of the Conduit News organization, you see. And Jim Hendren responded, that a link to the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette with his own quotes about the tobacco tax increase was fake news. And then we said, hey, this is a link to a Democrat-Gazette article. Senator Hendren said something to the effect of, I can say the word force, unlike, not like a 7-year-old. You can't even, because you got to understand something here. The term task force has been applied to the governing style of the Hutchinson-Hendren administration for a couple of years now. Back in 2015 is when this all started. And they never liked it. They never liked the idea of it being a task farce and being made fun of, which actually just kind of motivated me, to be quite honest, to continue writing as many parodies as we can. You know what I mean? So that's just an observation. Apparently, if you use the word task farce, it really gets under Marble Palace types, their skin. It really gets under their skin. So, anyway, they've recommended 3 plans to a consultant. And let's see here. I want to get in on this because it was at the third paragraph, 1, 2, 3, 4, fourth paragraph. It was created under state law enacted in 2017 to placate some lawmakers who favor individual income tax cuts beyond those enacted in 2015 and 2017, projected to reduce revenue by combined $150 million a year. It's the second paragraph I want to focus on, rather. The Tax Reform and Relief Task Force also decided to study various options to raise tobacco and alcohol taxes to help pay for more tax cuts, and options to change the state's fuel taxes to raise money for highways. I wonder if they're going to put a separate sales tax on gas. There's an excise tax on gas, right? But there's not a sales tax on gas. The reason I say that is their whole grocery tax increase was torpedoed, okay? The grocery tax increase was torpedoed because Jan Morgan ran a primary, right? And since Jan Morgan ran the primary, or ran in the primary, rather, the ASA had to come out and say, I'm not for the grocery tax the task force is considering. Really kind of exposing the whole thing as a farce. I mean, as the political winds shift, they'll do whatever they need to do. Well, one of their exemption lists, when they were going over the vast, the tax cheats, basically, the people that they say, are not paying the sales tax like everybody else because they've got these exemptions carved out, they had on there that the gas tax was not being taxed under the sales tax laws. And can you believe that? Now, there was already an excise tax. But don't think that that's going to stop them. I mean, folks, they would just as easily, they'd have no problem double taxing your gasoline purchases, leaving the excise tax where it is, then putting a sales tax on top of that. I wonder if that's what they're thinking here. They got to have, what does Dan Douglas say? State Representative Dan Douglas. We have to have money to do things. If you want to fund highways, you need to vote for this bill. You want to fund pre-K. What we're going to do, we're going to draw lots, see who we throw out of nursing homes. So, in February, in the midst of a Republican primary, Governor Asa Hutchinson said that he wanted to cut the top individual income tax rate from 6.9% to 6%. He said that that would reduce revenue by $180 million a year. The tax farce on Tuesday voted to send the governor's proposal as well as 2 other plans to its consultant, Regional Economic Models, for what a task force co-chairman, Senator Jim Hendren, called dynamic scoring to assess proposals. I will say this, dynamic scoring is a good thing. You can't score tax cuts and things like that in a static way. It just slants the predictions too far to the government's favor, meaning the big government favor, that sort of thing. Also, let's see, one of two other plans called Option A would reduce the number of individual income tax tables from 3 to 1 to simplify the rates and tax brackets. Option A also would reduce the top rate from 6.9% to 6% for people with taxable incomes of at least $80,000 a year. The State Department of Finance and Administration estimates this goal would reduce revenue by $276 million a year. That's almost the amount of money they spent on software and never got it to work. The projection includes the upcoming effect of a tax cut passed in 2017. That cut, taking effect January 1st, 2019, will reduce revenue by $50 million, cutting rates for people with taxable incomes below $21,000. You know, the people who pay a lot of taxes anyway, those who make less than $21,000 a year. The other plan, called Option B, would reduce the number of individual income tax tables from 3 to 1. Option B would reduce the top individual income tax rate from 6.9 to 6.5 for people with taxable income of at least $80,000 a year. Option B would also repeal the tax cut enacted in 2017 for people with less than $21,000 in taxable income. They'll never do that one. They just won't. They don't have the capacity to field hostile questions from a liberal press. The leadership doesn't. They don't know how to, because they're not standing up for conservative ideas anyway. So they're not approaching government with consistent principles, and so they can't field hostile questions from a liberal press that are going to make any sense. Because Option B would result in an income tax increase for people making less than $21,000 a year, it would require an emergency clause and 3/4 vote of the 100-member House. So that's out. Now, Jim Hendren, according to the Gazette, said afterward that the consultant will be asked to review Option B with an added feature of creating an earned income tax credit of 10% of the federal earned income tax credit for low-income people. So Jim Hendren is asking the consultant here to consider a welfare program. That's what an earned income tax credit is. I won't be surprised if the Republicans go for it because they're Arkansas Republicans. This is what we can expect. Quote, there is not quite as much support for it, but there is significant support for corporate income tax reduction and Option B, he said. Okay, well, we can only hope, right, boys? Yeah, we can only hope. Apparently, they got frustrated with the Department of Finance and Administration because they got some bad news that their estimates were off by $80 million, and so that made them kind of upset. And anyway, here we go. So what will I take from this? Oh, actually, we got to get to the second to last paragraph. One proposal would raise the cigarette tax by 15 cents to $1.30 a pack. A raise projected to create $26 million a year. The other proposal would raise the cigarette tax by 50 cents to $1.65 a pack to raise a projected $77 million a year. The 16-member panel also voted to study indexing fuel taxes to factors such as consumer price index, fuel efficiency, and economic growth, and highway construction costs, creating an indexed sales tax rate on fuels that changes based on highway construction costs, and creating a road user fee for owners of electric and hybrid vehicles paid when the vehicle is registered. They want to double tax your gas. They want to double tax your gas. You already pay an excise tax. Put a sales tax on it. I'm telling you, they want more revenue. It's a sad state of affairs, folks. It really is. I wish I could help you. I wish I could. Wish we could figure out, some way to get them convinced that they need to shrink the size of government. I don't know what else to do besides tell you the truth. But this is these are the policies that they're advocating. We're going to take a break. The telephone number to text right now, 870-275-9799. Don't go anywhere. Back in a moment.
Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor-lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
This is Mother Government. My people. The promised revenue gathering to fund my motherly goals, such as the Arkansas Works, Obamacare, private option has commenced. I have asked my representatives and senators to execute my will concerning new revenues, from the tires you use to drive on my roads, the candy and sodas you consume and purchase in my stores, and the digital products you download on my internet. Your sacrifices and tributes, which are owed, display a measure of obedience, but there are still collectible sacrifices I require from the people to increase the work and size of our great government of Arkansas. There are two matters left unresolved. 1. I require a general tribute for all purchases made on my internet. Not just digital products, but all products. My dear children, there are those who would thwart my motherly goals of progress. If you see them, please combat their misguided notions of freedom by using phrases like mom and pop, and tax cheat. 2. I still require more revenue sacrifices concerning your consumption of my gasoline. I require your undying loyalty on the subject. Subjects, in conclusion. More revenue is good. Static revenue is bad. This message was brought to you by your stewards, aristocrats serving Arkansas. Thank you, my children, in advance for your required and expected obedience that keeps society safe and prosperous. And always remember, from cradle to grave.
PHP Parody. Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Instead of the, so our phone line, we had a lightning strike last night, I'm told. Our entire building, our phones are not working in the entire building. So you will have to just kind of bear with us today. We've got people working on it, and so I don't know. It may be fixed within a couple minutes. I'm not really sure. But lightning strike last night from where we broadcast from, and it's kind of blown out our phone lines. So it snuck up on us, too. We always talk about the definitions of words and phrases and how one of the reasons the conservative movement is so divided is because we can't agree on the definitions of words and phrases like tax cut or tax increase. We're not the only state that has that problem. Back in 2017, there was talk of an internet sales tax. Jake Files, who's now been, he's pled guilty to stealing taxpayer money to enrich himself, and others were advocating this tax. And Conduit reported that it was a tax increase because it was going to result in more revenue coming out of the pockets of the people that are currently out of it. And, of course, the big government progressive said, no, you already owe this tax. You're a tax cheat. You already owe. It's not a tax increase. It's not a tax increase. I'm a conservative. It's not a tax increase. And, of course, we were saying, well, no, the definition of a tax increase would be more money. So if you're going to do something that's going to result in more money coming out of our pockets, then, you are going to do something that's going to raise our taxes. And it made people furious. I mean, because they just can't stand to be called what they are. And I just wanted to let you know that it's not just Arkansas, folks. Down in Mississippi, they're fighting they have fought in the past to previous battles like this. I want you to listen. This is a state representative from Mississippi. Basically, well, it kind of sounds like one of my monologues. Listen.
Some people are going to tell you it's not a tax increase. It's just an action that results in people paying more taxes. I mean, seriously? I mean, what kind of semantic games are we going to play with this? That's the stuff they do in Washington. Let's leave that in Washington, not right here in Jackson. If you take an action that results in everyone paying more taxes, that's called a tax increase. This is a tax increase, and we had a tax expert that we brought to our Capitol to advise us on our tax system last year. We had all these hearings about taxes. That tax expert was asked, would it be a good idea for us to tax internet sales? And that tax expert told us no, that would be a bad idea. That would be economically harmful, and we should not do it. Our focus here should be growing our economy. What we are doing here today is a zero-sum game. Every dollar we collect is one fewer dollar that Mississippians have in their pocket. You would never take money out of their pocket unless you believe that we should have it because we're smarter and we're better at spending their own money than they are. Ladies and gentlemen, that is not the case, and we've told our constituents that all day long. There is absolutely nothing conservative about this bill.
Boy, doesn't that sound familiar? That's again a state representative from Mississippi that was sent to me, and they said Mississippi has a carefully crafted language problem as well. I mean, and again, it just comes back to what we always talk about. You can't you can't agree rather on the definition of words and phrases, and it's very, very frustrating. It's extremely frustrating. We didn't get to this. We'll probably get to this next hour. Again, we're going to talk to from the Alliance Defending Freedom. We're going to have a guest on tomorrow talking about these rulings that have been so favorable to free speech and religious freedom and things like that. Here's one of them, though. This is a huge one, that the ruling favors pregnancy centers. Yesterday, the Supreme Court of the United States ruled that you don't have to mention abortion services at pregnancy crisis centers that are started. Many of them started with religious goals in mind, religious conviction. This was a California law that was trying to make pregnancy resource centers or help centers or crisis pregnancy centers, whatever you want to call them. They give prenatal care. They help after the child's born. They set up all kinds of, that you can get an ultrasound there to actually see that this is a life, And Justice Clarence Thomas wrote the decision. It's a 5-4 decision, and he said the government drafted script specifically mentions abortion, the very practice the petitioners are devoted to opposing. By requiring petitioners to inform women how they can obtain state-subsidized abortions, at the same time petitioners try to dissuade women from choosing that option, plainly alters the content of the petitioner's speech. It's a freedom of speech issue, thank goodness. In a concurring opinion, Justice Anthony Kennedy said the history of the California law shows the faith-based centers were targeted because of their beliefs. Governments must not be allowed to force persons to express a message contrary to their deepest convictions. What this was compelled speech. This is very, very dangerous ground. You know, there's a famous professor of psychology, a clinical psychologist. He's famous. His name's Jordan Peterson. And one of the reasons he got so famous is because he spoke out against a Canadian law that was going to force him to use the pronouns that other people wanted. It was a way to compel speech, and that's what the problem was. That was the biggest issue is from in a free society, Western civilization, you can't compel people to use these certain words in communicating with one another. And that's exactly what was going on here with California. They were trying to compel people who didn't agree with abortion to tell people about where they can go get abortions. Clear violation. The huge implications here for in terms of that it was only a 5-4 decision. I mean, isn't that scary? It was only a 5-4 decision. You would think this would be easy for these guys. It's like first day of law school. You'd think they would teach something so basic in a free society. Quote, if a state can lawfully require a doctor to tell a woman seeking an abortion about adoption services, why should it not be able, as here, to require a medical counselor to tell a woman seeking prenatal care or other reproductive health care about childbirth and abortion services? Now, that is from Justice Breyer. That's what they're saying. And then Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Sonia Sotomayor, and Elena Kagan, they said the same thing. They said this is ridiculous. If a state can lawfully require a doctor to tell women seeking an abortion about adoption services, why should it not be able, as here, to require? I don't think it should be able to. How about that? How about it goes both ways? I mean, maybe you have some doctor. Of course, wouldn't that go against their oath? But maybe you have some doctor that just can't stand adoption. And by the way, there's a huge difference there. Telling somebody about a way to, and this is, well, we're going to have to, again, agree on the definition of words and phrases. Abortion is the death of a child, okay? That's what happens. That's the result. The result of abortion is death. Yeah, we don't want to force people to tell people how to kill their babies, okay? Compelling somebody to say, hey, there's adoption if you want to adopt. We have these adoption services. The state runs these adoption services, right? The state actually runs them. And there's certainly a difference there. But only if you believe that there's a difference between life and death. Is there a difference between life and death? Do you believe there's a difference between being dead and being alive? Telephone number 870-275-9799. You can only text, though. You got a lightning strike. Our phone lines are out while we're trying to fix it. We'll be right back. One more hour coming your way next.
The news and talk of Northeast Arkansas. This is News Talk 101.3 FM and 12:30 AM KBTM, Jonesboro, an EAB radio station.
For our families, boosting our economy, and preventing excessive attorney's fees. That's what Issue 1 is really all about. I mean, that's a lot of stuff that Issue 1's about, Joey.
Yeah, and it's just untruthful. If you look at the facts, it's just not borne out. Again, if the type of doctors that we want to attract are the type that are looking whether when they kill somebody in a hospital, if they're one of the 685 people a day die by preventable medical errors in hospitals in this country. That's over 400,000 people a year dying in this country by preventable medical errors by the Johns Hopkins study. Now, that's scary, Paul, and we want to take away the people's rights. I mean, what we need to do is make sure that we're protecting folks and making creating better systems and making sure that close to 400,000 people a year are not dying by preventable medical errors.
I mean, who's gonna argue with that? You know, I mean, who's gonna argue with that? I mean, I guess they would. Now let's talk about the rulemaking authority. I noticed that the Supreme Court of Arkansas Chief Justice Dan Kemp, he didn't have a lot of great things to say about this amendment. That he's against it. And that has to do, I would assume, with the blurring of the separation of powers. I mean, you know, you've mentioned the 7th Amendment. You've mentioned the people's rights. Well, what about the separation of powers argument that the legislative branch should be separate and equal to the judicial and the executive branch?
It is fundamental to the foundation of this country, and that's what our founders knew, that you had to have separation of powers. And the legislature in Arkansas wants to control the rules for their special interests. And again, you know, court rules are made in a very judicious fashion. You know, you have both sides, you have public comment. It takes place over years. What nursing home owners, greedy nursing home owners, want to do is they want to control the rules, and through you know, they know they can pay these legislators a lot of money and push these things through in a highly political environment, change the rules of the game overnight. And, you know, that's a dangerous concept. And folks like Justice Kemp understand that. Former Justice Annabelle Clinton Tuck understands that. And folks who are paying attention to our Constitution understand that. The separation of powers is critical. And there's a reason for it. And Randy Zook can say that, but it just creates a rigged system, and
yeah,
our constitutional rights are too important for to play politics with them.
No, and you know, I was saying this the other day that, you know, well, first of all, Joey, I would, you know, I was making the point that, listen, all government in some way or another is political. With judges these days, most of them either believe that the law changes over time or the law is what it is. I mean, those are two competing judicial philosophies. So in a lot of ways, politics is already in all levels of government. But it certainly is more political in the legislative branch than it is in the judicial branch. And I know those people down there, and I can't think of anything more terrifying. I know their carefully crafted language. I know how they game the system. I know how they game the people. I can't think of anything more terrifying than the next John Woods or the next Jake Files. If this bill passes, or if this amendment passes that we all are going to vote on in November, it's going to be on the ballot. If it passes, the next Jake Files or John Woods is going to slip something in there for some class action lawsuit for some nursing home owner or something, you know, and they're going to control what the evidence the jury can see or set or consider, and it'll be the legislative body that will have done it, and it'll reek of special interest, and it's going to be devastating to the separation of powers, to our constitutional republic, to all of it. And I don't speculate. I know it will happen if this passes. So, anyway.
It absolutely.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the program today. Thank you so much for being with us. This is hour number 2, and it's the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. We are building a liberty machine here. So glad that you're with us. We have, let's see, we did have an interview scheduled for last hour, but we had some lightning strikes last night, and our phone lines are out. Still out. We had an interview scheduled for the bottom of this hour. Young conservative Arkansas Politico Ken Yang was supposed to be with us. I don't think we're going to be able to get him on because we just don't have the phone line capability. If your phones don't work because of a lightning strike, what are you going to do? So there's a chance that it gets repaired in time, but I'm not so sure. We'll see. But I want to start this hour by just kind of giving a shout out to a young man by the name of Alex Hopper. He's from Cabot High School, and he's a senior, and he was elected American Legion Arkansas Boys Nation Senator. An upcoming Cabot High School senior will soon be on his way to our nation's capital. Alex Hopper recently attended Boys State at the University of Central Arkansas in Conway. He was one of only 2 out of 538 students elected an American Legion Arkansas Boys Nation Senator. Alex will be traveling to Washington, D.C. in July to represent Arkansas at Boys Nation. Now, this is, I don't know if you know, this is R.D. Hopper's son. And R.D. Hopper is, of course, a great conservative. I know you hear him on the radio, and he is really I know he's proud. I saw he posted this. He gave a shout out to his son. He's proud of his son. So I just wanted to give R.D. and Alex a shout out. It's always fun when you can witness the success of others. Okay, did you guys hear about Senator Jeremy Hutchinson? Yeah, he's no longer with his law firm. Probably because the law firm was like, man, what are you doing? Probably because his other partners were like, I don't know if we need to be associated with you much longer. We'd still like to have some sort of reputation after you get indicted so that we can make a living for our families. We don't need you here anymore. No? I mean, they have to change the sign and everything. They have to change the name of the firm. He was the last name on the name of the law firm was Steele, Wright, Gray, and Hutchinson. Joe says Steele, Wright, Gray, and nephew. He's still got another law firm to fall back on. He's part of 2 of them. So, Arkansas Times reporting that Jeremy Hutchinson is no longer associated with Little Rock Law Firm. The law firm once known as. The law firm formerly known as Steele, Wright, Gray, and Hutchinson is now known as Steele, Wright, Gray. Its website no longer contains a reference to Hutchinson, the Republican state senator who's been implicated but not charged in a massive bribery scheme to which former Professional Family Health Care, or Preferred Family Health Care, I think this is the name, Preferred Family Health Care executive Rusty Cranford, former lobbyist, pled guilty. The firm did comment, according to the Arkansas Times, Mr. Hutchinson voluntarily resigned from the firm last week. We understand the need for him to focus on matters outside the scope of the firm. We wish him the best, and we're all grateful for the opportunity to have worked with him. Yeah, voluntarily, yeah. It's like, I don't know. It just doesn't sound right to me, voluntarily. Do you voluntarily go to prison? Most people don't, I don't think. All right, so that is the news about Jeremy Hutchinson. just based on that movement, you would assume that people are assuming that there's going to be more news about Senator Jeremy Hutchinson. He still hasn't resigned. The governor hasn't called for his resignation yet. You know, there really does need to be. Does need to be a topic about ethics. I was talking to somebody the other day. I actually need to have him on about this very subject, about ethics and what ethics mean and how ethics can change. Ethics and what is an acceptable ethics standard can change with the times, right? Right now, the ethical standards of Arkansas are that you only need to resign from office if you're indicted by the feds. That's ethical. We're ethical people. I want to give you a flashback piece of audio, and I'm going to give you this for two reasons. Number one, this is a video of Senator Jeremy Hutchinson questioning Senator Linda Collins Smith on her ethics bill last year. Linda Collins Smith's ethics bill would have essentially made it illegal for attorneys to do what attorneys have been doing, who are legislators, and that's taking money from clients and passing bills on their behalf. And if you look at this, it is, for those of you watching online, conduitnews.com, facebook.com/conduitnews or YouTube, it is really surreal. I mean, you can't believe it. It's like one of those moments where now that we know what we know, now that we know that he got $500,000, it's no wonder he was challenging Senator Linda Collins Smith and saying, no, you can't pass this bill, or I've got questions on this bill. And of course it failed. Senator Linda Collins Smith's bill failed. That would have essentially, it would have made attorneys like other legislators who are not attorneys. So that's the first thing. Okay, I want you to listen to this for the first thing. Now, the second thing is I want you to understand how valuable it is that Senator Jim Hendren has called for streaming and recording of the Senate meetings, because you really can't hear much of what Jeremy Hutchinson is saying. For those of you that are watching the program, you're going to get way more out of this than those of you listening. You can hear Senator Linda Collins Smith, though, because she's at the well speaking into a microphone. And so it's much more audible. But I just want you to understand how, we have to have people inside the chamber. You have to go, basically have this guerrilla-type style of filming in order to get them on record. But this is a very valuable piece of footage, and a picture is worth 1,000 words. A video is worth even more. This is Senator Jeremy Hutchinson on the floor of the Senate last year? Yeah, last year, arguing with Linda Collins Smith about what her bill would do. And this is his first question. He rose from his desk, doesn't speak into a microphone, and asks this. Listen.
So, if the client pays a lawyer to
it's great.
I've got a case this year that the client had permanent guardianship over some kids.
Okay, stop. So you can't really make out what he's saying. I'm proving my point here. This is how bad it is. But what Jeremy Hutchinson is saying is, so I have a client. He's like, I have a client, and I think it's something about some sort of family issue or whatever. Notice he's not saying, I have a client that's paying me $9,000 a month to pass bills for them. Are you saying he's not saying that? No, he goes to from what I can make out of what he's saying, some sort of pain point politics, like he's, a public servant of some kind and looking out for families. Keep going here. Listen, bear with me, because eventually you'll hear something you can understand.
This bill is still allowed, basically, it's going to allow her to die, or her never, because client
All right, stop. What he's asking is, listen. He's asking that if he has a client, as an attorney, he has a client, and he's getting money to represent that client, and he realizes that there's a problem with the law. There's a legal problem with the law, and it's victimized somebody. He's asking, so you're saying that this bill wouldn't allow me to address that legislatively now? And everybody's probably like, the big government types are like, yeah, attorneys should be able to do that for their... No, they shouldn't. That's the point. That's the problem. So the answer, I would say, is no, you won't be able to do that. Or you shouldn't be able to do that because of the possibility of corruption. I don't care if you're... It's just like this term limits thing. It really is. People say, well, term limits are going to hurt the... It's gonna hurt the good guys. Well, how many good guys do we have? Number one, and number two. So what if it does? Okay, we've got more people that can serve, and I'm willing to sacrifice the potential good guys that could stay there forever, that are above the corruption, because you're going to get rid of so many of the bad guys. Now, Senator Linda Collins-Smith last year, and again, the picture's worth 1,000 words here, responded. This is, again, Hutchinson speaking against her ethics bill. This is what she said.
If that person that hired you to handle changes lobbied for, and you've got a case going on, I think that you are an intelligent attorney. I think you know, Diana, answer the question just a minute. I think you know when you're crossing that line. If you don't know, Braden Sloan, who came out after the meeting to talk to me about this piece of legislation that has a gap, that there has been a loophole. And when he talked to me, I think you've got his number, and you could call him and make sure before you do that. That's what we do. And I'm not an attorney, but I have to make sure. And if I decide not to make that phone call and move forward, Senator Hutchinson, taking a risk, but in your case, there's no reason you should not have to follow the same rules that I do when it comes for pay for hire.
Stop. Isn't that rich? Isn't that rich, especially when the camera, and Kenny Wallace did this, zooming in on Jeremy Hutchinson, listening to him being lectured by Senator Linda Collins-Smith, that I think when you're crossing that line. I think you're an intelligent attorney. I think Linda Collins-Smith was doing a little bit of trolling, don't you? Just a little bit. He did not like that. He did not like that at all. And so then, Jeremy Hutchinson goes on and, accuses her of not answering the question. But anyway, her bill failed. And then she was targeted by Governor Asa Hutchinson with a primary opponent, and she lost her primary opponent after running that bill. I think it might have something to do with this exchange you're seeing right here. And it's a very sad thing. But you fast forward to Tuesday, June 26th, headline from Max Brantley at the Arkansas Times. Jeremy Hutchinson, no longer associated with Little Rock Law Firm. We've got to take a break. Back in a moment.
conservative legislation killed?
Or do you need policies enacted that ensure government growth?
Then you need to get
Nephewed. Hi, I'm nephew number 1 of uncle, nephew, and nephew, attorneys at law. I'm not a lawyer, but I am a senator.
And I'm nephew number 2, and I am a lawyer and also a senator.
Are you the victim of a recent accident in which the voters in your community mistakenly elected a limited government conservative who is now actually implementing the ideas he or she campaigned on?
That's right, nephew number 1. Don't be a victim of democratic elections any longer. At Uncle, Nephew, and Nephew, we are committed to killing limited government legislation and promoting bills that increase the size of government by using any tool at our disposal.
Because sometimes the truth of the matter is, principles get in the way of pragmatism.
Just listen to some of our great testimonials.
Ever since I've been using the nephews, all my special interests have been served. As long as you make sure your contract says lobbying services are prohibited, then the legal services of uncle, nephew, and nephew are legal. Trust me, put the nephews on them.
It came out of nowhere. I was blindsided last election cycle when my well-funded and paid-for politician lost to some grassroots limited government voters. But then I hired the nephews, and they killed all the conservative policies the voters wanted. I got nephewed.
I got nephewed too, and so can you. Uncle, nephew, and nephew will accept compensation via campaign contributions. Put the nephews on them.
PHP Parody. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
You'll see where Mitt Romney did get the nomination to be the senator for Utah. So he did get that Republican nomination. Thought that was interesting. And at the same time, you have this millennial Democrat socialist up in New York ousting an incumbent Democrat. A lot of people didn't see that one coming. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Yeah, that's what they're saying. Democratic giant slayer is one headline that I'm reading. Anyway, Razorbacks are now one game away from winning the World Series, the College Baseball World Series. Very exciting. I was watching the game with my dad last night, and we were, I guess I watched probably the first or second inning and that sort of thing, and it was just, you could just feel the energy just watching it on TV. Everybody in the stands and stuff. And, of course, I think Omaha's, 6 hours away from northwest Arkansas area. So a lot of people traveled up that way. So it's just a lot of fun to watch. I'll tell you that much. What else do we have here? We talked about this in the first hour, but we have the Supreme Court and the travel bans making the left just absolutely go into a tailspin here. I mean, they're absolutely losing it. We talked about why the travel ban being upheld is a good thing, that anybody with half a brain, when Trump issued the travel ban back in the day, right when he got elected, or got sworn in, anybody with half a brain knew Trump had the authority as president of the United States to do exactly what he did, but the media just lied to people. They said it was a Muslim ban, even though the ban includes countries like Venezuela and North Korea. They lied, and what they're really struggling with today is the fact that multiculturalism is being publicly dismissed as a legitimate world view. I mean, you can lie to yourself and tell yourself that all cultures' ideas are equal and result in the same amount of prosperity for their people, but that's not true. that is self-evident. It's demonstrably false. It's a demonstrably false notion. But the media called it a Muslim ban. The left and the celebrities on the left and the progressive, I mean, they all believed it, and so now they think it's the end of the world and the country's over, and that's just going to really, you got more Maxine Waters inciting violence. Again, multiculturalism is essentially multiculturalism in the context of what we're dealing with, is Islamic radicalism or fascism, Islamic fascism, is a suicidal mentality. When you combine that with a multiculturalism view, it's a suicidal mentality that you believe no matter what the risk to our country, we should assume other cultures have our best interest at heart, regardless of the vast amount of evidence to the complete contrary. All because the media says stereotypes are bad is preposterous. And again, it's dangerous. It's suicidal. Donald Trump is good to do and was right. And we now, again, it didn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that the President of the United States, who's the commander-in-chief of the military, can ban people from coming here from certain countries, especially when we're engaged in what is essentially forever ongoing military operations in the region. And all of this is happening, and everybody's, I've actually read stories about Iran, the travel ban, Iran, and they're talking more about the travel ban on Iran, but they're not talking to the people. They're not talking about the people in Iran that are now taking to the streets saying death to Palestine because they want to overthrow their government. You'd think that would be news, that a Middle Eastern country's protests are saying death to Palestine, but it gets virtually no coverage here, virtually none. But their videos are all over the internet, all over social media about the unrest in Iran right now. It's unbelievable. Also have the ruling from the Supreme Court yesterday that favors pregnancy resource or pregnancy help centers, pregnancy resource centers, crisis pregnancy centers. Joe, I think our phone lines may be back. So yeah, that's a good sign. I just saw the light go on, so that's good. So you have this notion that is protecting freedom of speech against the idea of compelled speech. So that's really positive. You also had earlier in the week, you had the florist not forced to do the flowers for the gay wedding. That decision came down in favor of the florist. So really, really positive stuff out of the Supreme Court. We're up against a hard break, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for being with us. We'll be back in just a moment.
It absolutely will happen. There's no question about that.
Yeah.
We've got to start with the premise that there's corruption. There's widespread corruption. I mean, conviction after conviction. John Woods, Jake Paul. The list goes on, and we've got to have checks and balances where the system is not rigged against everyday Arkansans. And we're not talking about this bill does nothing about class action lawsuits. This is about everyday. This is about people killed in trucking crashes. This is about people killed by nursing home abuse. This is about every type of case that's going to affect the rights of everyday Arkansans and the families. And we just can't let it happen. And folks need to be educated, and folks need to be reading about issue 1 and how dangerous it is, because it is dangerous. You just can't take the place of 12 everyday citizens listening to the evidence and making decisions. Randy Zook for special interests and David Norsworthy's for special interests, they want to put an arbitrary price tag on the value of human life, $500,000, no matter what the circumstances are, no matter how egregious the injuries are. And again, that's the reason that Jerry Cox and Rose Mims and Christian conservatives across this state are coming out against this. They understand the value of human life applies to not just unborn babies, but also children, stay-at-home moms, our elderly. That is the most vulnerable people in society. And somebody's got to stand up for those rights. And I appreciate what you're doing, standing up for those rights.
Well, I appreciate you, Joe. And I got one more question for you. We're talking with Joey McCutcheon. He's a Fort Smith attorney. We've been talking about this bad tort reform bill we're all going to be voting on. And I keep saying we're all going to be voting on it because I want everybody out there to know this November, you got to, make your decision up, make your mind up on this. Can I get your reaction to the implication of the governor's nephew, Jeremy Hutchinson, taking $500,000 in bribes? I mean, while we're on the topic of corruption, and it just gives, there's very few people that are calling for his resignation. The governor certainly is not. And you get the feeling that, everybody's been whispering for a long time about who gets extra money on the side and uses their law practice to do it and all this other stuff. But you get the feeling that, these federal court documents and the statement of fact and the guilty plea of Rusty Cranford from the Western District of Missouri in federal court there, that some people are trying to act like, well, it's some,
Bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
So in light of our the task force recommending 3 proposals to their consultants to shift taxes around, I think it's clear that at the very least, whatever the tax farce comes back with, it will be billed as revenue neutral. It will be billed as carefully crafted language. They're not gonna claim they're gonna raise your taxes. Obviously, they're going to reject any description of their plan as a tax increase. They're going to reject. They're not going to come out there and actually admit, hey, if we do this, we're getting more revenue from the people than we're getting from them now. They won't admit that. They will come out and say, we need to raise this tax, lower this tax, and it's revenue neutral, but it's going to be better for the people and better for the, that's what they're going to say. We know that now. It's confirmed. 100%. I wish it wasn't the case. I wish we could agree on. I think tax shifting is not a good idea. Look, I know our tax code is pretty messed up, but I would rather just start with a blank sheet of paper. You know what I mean? Start over with a blank sheet of paper. More than anything. I mean, that's what I would do first, to where you say, you talk about massive reform where you start with no income tax, with no sales tax, with no nothing, and you build it from the ground up. You don't even attempt to work with the existing code. You build everything from the ground up. I don't know why we can't do that. Like, that would be a huge undertaking. It would be a bold decision, but it wouldn't be taking the existing tax code and tweaking this and tweaking that like it's a thermostat. You know what I'm saying? Those are just my goals. Come on. The reason I say this is we've had 138 years of Democrat tax policy written in the legislature, and the Republicans get in and this is the best they got? No. But I thought I would recap, because there's a great article over at conduitforaction.org recapping the task force meeting from last week concerning raising your taxes on cigarettes. I know many of you, probably maybe you don't care if they raise taxes on cigarettes, but the policy itself is what is at issue, and getting them to admit the policy itself. A headline here from June 26th, the Tax Task Force studying cigarette tax increase. It was hard to get them to even admit that this was the case, and it's because they're so sensitive over what happened with their plans to raise your grocery taxes. Again, if it wasn't for Jan Morgan, Republican, running against Asa Hutchinson, they would be much closer to raising your grocery tax that is scheduled to phase out completely next year. Is that right? Or scheduled to fall again next year? They would be raising your groceries to 6.5% and creating a welfare program for, the low-income Arkansans. Earned income tax credit for them. They're obsessed with this earned income tax credit. Wealth care? Did I say wealth care? Sorry. Oh, okay. So, anyway, this is where we would be if Jan Morgan hadn't run. So they're very sensitive about the media. They're very sensitive about the methods that are, reported, the things that are being studied out there. And they don't want somebody to politically torpedo. Oh, that's good. I like it. Joe says, Joe, go ahead and just tell them what you say. No, you don't have to get everything set up. You just speak into the microphone and tell everybody what you just said. It's actually a really funny idea.
You said welfare, which made me think health care or a welfare program. Is my mic being fuzzy?
Yeah, it is a little bit. Anyway,
wealth care is like daycare for your money, a.k.a. taxes. And the government gets it.
Wealth care.
Yeah, they take care of all the wealth.
A daycare for your money. That's exactly right. Oh, man. So, or a nursing home. Yeah, that's really what it is. It's more like a nursing home for your money where you have no rights whatsoever. You have no recourse. You have no recourse after the government, mismanages your money or your well-being. You have no recourse. You have nothing you can do. The Tax Task Force met back on June 20th and June 21st to further study proposals and ideas for reform before the 2019 legislative session. A report of recommendations is due to Governor Asa Hutchinson and the General Assembly September 1st. Part of the two-day meeting included presentations on how to have a net reduction of $200 million in tax cuts. Nicole Keating from the Tax Foundation also presented an excise tax report and recommended Arkansas should consider raising the state's gas tax to better fund transportation needs. Stop. Raising the excise tax on gas means you pay more at the pump. The article from today actually says that they're looking at putting a sales tax on gasoline. So you already would be paying an excise tax, and now they want to add a sales tax on your gas taxes. As a matter of fact, let me just go right to the end of that story from today. The 16-member panel also voted to study indexing fuel taxes to factors such as consumer price index, fuel efficiency and economic growth, and highway construction costs, creating an indexed sales tax rate on fuels that changes based on highway construction costs. So they're looking to add a sales tax, not that they're going to do it, but they're studying it, to add a sales tax to your gasoline that already has an excise tax. And according to Conduit for Action, they're even talking about raising the excise tax on your gasoline. Also part of this two-day meeting included discussion on the idea of raising the cigarette tax in order to make tax reductions elsewhere. Currently, cigarettes are taxed at $1.15 per pack. This rate places Arkansas as the second highest in the region behind Texas, who does not have a state income tax. The presentation from the American Cancer Society's Cancer Action Network recommended raising the cigarette tax up to $1.50 per pack, which would increase taxes by $121 million. Their argument was that raising the tax would reduce tobacco use and decrease health costs. In response to this recommendation to the proposal, task force co-chairman and Governor Hutchinson's nephew, Jim Hendren, told Michael Wickline of the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette, quote, "We are not here to raise taxes, and that's obviously what his proposal does, but if it makes sense to tax that item more because of health care costs and reduce them somewhere else, that is a legitimate reform proposal." Now, without retreading, I just want to say that if you believe in socialized health care, then you have no problem taxing somebody more for what you deem unhealthy behavior. I say what you deem, I mean, obviously cigarettes is not a healthy habit, but is eating bacon? Is eating donuts? There's a lot of people that would say eating bacon is pretty healthy if you understand, you know, the new science that is out there, the studies that are out there about high-fat diets and low complex carbohydrate diets and how beneficial that can be to your health, to fighting off cancer, and a lot of other things. It's just something to consider. My point is a lot of this is subjective. They have, for like the last 50 years, they've told you that eggs are good for you. Then they tell you that eggs are going to kill you. Then they tell you that eggs are good for you again. Then they tell you eggs are going to kill you. And so, I mean, I seriously, if they ever get full socialized medicine and they can make the economic argument that if you have bacon, then you make healthcare more expensive, so you can't have bacon. I mean, they don't know what's good for one of you might kill the person sitting next to you, right? Because we're all different. But anyway, let's hope that never happens. But to embrace that argument from a Republican is just so dangerous, and it's just really sad to me. But anyway, I digress. So that's the quote in the Democrat Gazette article. Let's be clear. Okay? That's a quote from Jim Hendren. The next day, the tax task force voted to further study raising the cigarette tax to $1.30 per pack, a 15-cent per pack increase. But then you look at Twitter, and there was some arguing on Twitter. When Conduit News tweeted out an article from the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette about the cigarette tax increase being discussed, the Tax Foundation's Nicole Keating and Senator Jim Hendren simultaneously took to Twitter to state this was not true. Isn't that odd? Senator Hendren called the article, with direct quotes from him, fake news, and then declared it wasn't, in fact, an article from the Gazette. He writes, Conduit for fake news. Conduit News writes, this is a retweet from the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. Jim Hendren says, nah, they know how to spell force or aren't run by 7-year-olds. Apparently, Jim Hendren doesn't like it when you make fun of his task force. I don't know. If you call it a task farce, he really doesn't like that very much. It hasn't for a few years now. So, Nicole Keating emphatically rejected this retweet and commentary, and that it was, quote, not what happened at all, and that the cigarette tax increase wasn't, quote, was not proposed. She writes, were y'all there today? Because that's not what happened at all. The task force identified priorities for cutting $200 million in taxes. Again, Conduit News, this is a retweet from the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. Nicole Keating, yes, from day one. Michael Wickline was there both days. He can confirm. Conduit News, this is his article. Direct quotes from Senator Hendren saying they are not there to raise taxes, but to raise them on cigarettes to reduce somewhere else is a legitimate proposal on that issue. Nicole Keating, and if you had followed today's debate, you'd know that's not what, or so you'd know that it wasn't proposed. Then Conduit News responded with an article detailing the exact proposal from that day, which included a proposal to further study raising the cigarette tax increase, and even had a quote from Nicole Keating on her opposition to this increase. Nicole Keating then backed up and states she never said there was not a proposal to raise the cigarette tax, but just not to raise it to $1.50 as was pitched on day one of the meetings. Here's another tweet. So is this a lie too? Has a quote from you. It's from KARK4 News. Thanks for opposing the tax increase, because Nicole Keating of the Tax Foundation doesn't think the cigarette tax is a good thing. Good for her. And then you see she says that did get proposed. Yes, I never said it didn't, even though, anyway, it was the benefit of the doubt conclusion here is that the confusion was over whether it was a $1.50 increase or a 15-cent increase that was being proposed. Conduit News that says, to remove any confusion on how much of a tax increase is proposed, we could have live streamed and archived videos of these meetings. Senate leadership continues to fight transparency. Conduit News said that on June 21st, and then Senator Jim Hendren, to his credit, came out and is now advocating for putting cameras in the Senate and Senate committee rooms. Thank goodness. Way to go, Senator Hendren. As much as I disagree with you on a ton of stuff, I think advocating for cameras in the Senate is a long time coming, and I am so grateful that this is even being talked about, because we need it we desperately need it. So to recap, Conduit News retweeted a news article about raising the cigarette tax. Senator Jim Hendren and Nicole Keating emphatically rejected that ever happened. Then Conduit News shared with them articles in which they were quoted on their position on the cigarette tax increase. Wow. And to be clear, the tax task force voted to further study and get information about raising the cigarette tax from the current rate of $1.15 per pack to $1.30 per pack, a 15-cent increase. And it talks about how Paul Harrell broke down the exchange of the segment. I did this on Friday, by the way. But check this out. Here's an angle to the cigarette tax that we don't talk about. A main pitch for raising the cigarette tax from the American Cancer Society was that it would decrease the number of people smoking and thereby reduce health care costs. Senator Hendren pointed to this as a reason why it may be a legitimate proposal to increase the cigarette tax to cover increasing health care costs. However, instead of raising a cigarette tax, the legislature could have rejected Senator Hendren's SB 5 of 2017 in the special session. If you remember, that bill raided the Health Century Trust Fund to the tune of $105 million of tobacco settlement funds. That fund was to be used by the state of Arkansas and its programs and other projects related to health care services, health education, and health-related research. As is common practice at the Marble Palace, the legislature now seems to be in the position to raise taxes to fund projects that they previously had money for, but instead prioritized elsewhere instead of using it for its intended purpose. You know, the Tobacco Settlement Fund. The legislature should reject any tax increases and instead reduce spending and prioritize spending better. Please contact your legislator and ask them to vote against any tax increase proposals, including a tax increase on cigarettes. There we go. That's up right now, conduitforaction.org. Just recapping that. We're going to take a break. We're going to be right back with Mr. Tim Jacob of Arkansas Term Limits. Don't go anywhere.
Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine. and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
It's a PHP parody.
Hey, man, you got any of that marble rock?
Yeah, I've got the hookup.
Thanks. I need a fix real bad. I'm itching to grow some government.
How much you need?
I'm gonna need a taxpayer's dime bag.
No problem, sir. 1 taxpayer dime of marble rock. Enjoy.
Thanks, man. They don't call it Little Rock for nothing. Am I right?
Did you know your state representative or state senator may be addicted to growing government? The drug is called marble rock, and too much of it will cause marble fever. Watch for the warning signs. Does your legislator suddenly display a lack of humility when faced with basic questions? Does he or she suddenly develop hubris and pride that was not present during the campaign for office? These are signs they might be smoking the terrible drug, marble rock. The solution? Detox. Vote for detox. Vote to send them home for their own good. Warning! Some politicians once voted out of office will not go home and stay in Little Rock to get their fix by lobbying, also known as the Burris Syndrome.
PHP parody.
Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, so we're checking in here with Mr. Tim Jacob. It's ArkansasTermLimits.org. That's ArkansasTermLimits.org. Tim, welcome back, sir. How's things going? Nope. Tim, can you hear us? Well, I don't know I guess we don't have Tim. It's unfortunate. We'll figure something out. Maybe we lost him or something. Tim, feel free to call back if we lost you or if you can't hear us or that sort of thing. Go ahead. I guess you can take the graphic down. In the meantime, okay, so Arkansas term limits. This is a growing controversy. It is a growing controversy. There are people who just don't want more restrictive term limits on legislators. I am one of these guys that says at this point, what other evidence do you need? I mean, that we need to restrict these guys. And we went over a flashback article yesterday, all the way back from 2014, that talked about these 16-year term limits can actually give legislators up to 22 years of service if you play your cards right. It depends on how you draw your terms. 18 to 22 years instead of the 16 years. Of course, this is a proposal to bring it down to 10 years, which I think is a decade is perfectly reasonable. And here's the thing. There are good guys with great voting records that'll have to leave. but there are also big government liberals with bad voting records. And right now there's a lot more of them. There's a lot more of them than there are of the limited government types. Not to mention, look at the level of corruption that we're seeing in the headlines every single day. I guess I would just say to dismiss. I guess I think to say that the term limits and the corruption, the term limits can be an answer. It's a legitimate argument to say that limiting the amount of time you can be in Little Rock to carve out a financial niche for yourself is an answer to the corruption. Is there a sacrifice where the good guys maybe have to go home too early? Yeah, but at this point, I don't see how the good guys can hold. I mean, what do you have? I mean, you have a handful of people. You have a handful of limited government conservative. Now, not all people who are not limited government conservatives are corrupt. That's true. That is true. But right now, you have a handful of limited government conservatives that are going to hold the rest of them accountable? No. But hey, if you want more information on the term limits thing, you can go to arkansastermlimits.org. You can also call. They'll get you a petition in your hands in 24 hours if you call 501-590-8260. That's 501-590-8260. That's 501-590-8260 if you want this term limits petition in your hand with 24 hours. You go around your work, your office, and everything else. At this point, folks, here's the other reason. You want to, and I said this yesterday, you want to know the other reason we need term limits? Because John Woods is a convicted felon. And we would not have the current law we did unless he had, if he had not been comfortable with deceiving the entire state with a phony ballot issue that was mistitled, that was deceptively written, intentionally deceptively written to deceive you, to double their terms, to increase their pay. Folks, if anything, the state of Arkansas needs to go back to the way things were, and I don't even care if it is more restrictive. I might even support that. Just because we were victims, and we've been victims of corruption, and we've been victims of Senator John Woods and the General Assembly and these ballot initiatives that they refer to us. And it's time we get a little relief, and a relief from the corruption. And the fact is, what if the term limits petition gets on the ballot? It will be straightforward, and it will be very honest with the people as to what it is doing, and the people will decide. We've got to wrap up the show, rather. I apologize for the technical difficulties that we had. We've had a string of those lately. Really frustrating, but hey, we can't control lightning. So we're going to be back here tomorrow. This has been... Yeah, that's right. If we could somehow harness that lightning into the 1.21 gigawatts and infuse it into the flux capacitor, we got to wrap up the show. We got to end the day. But your day is just starting. I hope you have a great one. Arkansas, be safe.